Welcome to Fuel Disclosure, a Moffitt Services podcast. On this show, you will learn how Moffitt Services is pioneering the fuel delivery industry. From fuels and lubricant product news, to stories from the community, to recent industry trends with subject matter experts. Make sure to like and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss a moment from Moffitt. To learn even more about the Moffitt Services difference, visit moffittservices.com. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Fuel Disclosure. I'm your host, Landry St. Clair, and today I'm joined with Ryan Moffitt, who is the Director of Safety. Hi, Ryan. How are you today?
Hey, Landry. Doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'm so excited. It's been a long time coming, I feel like. I've been waiting for you to come on the show. Ryan, to get us started, obviously, I want to know a little bit more about you, kind of your journey with Moffitt, what year you started, and honestly, obviously, your last name is Moffitt, so tell me about how you got into this business.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like all the rest of us, I was born into it. Grandma had the company, before I was even born.
Yeah.
But obviously, it was a long road to here. It's gone through different iterations. Grandma ran her business, and then Dad ran his business, and then Dad sold some years ago. It's probably been 15 years ago now. And that kind of scattered me and Roy and Rusty, the two Moffitts, or the three Moffitt sons. And we all kind of went off and did our own thing.
Yeah.
Rusty worked at Suncoast for a while. Roy Jr. started his frac fueling business. I went to work for a buddy of mine, Enrique, at a company doing OSHA compliance. So I was doing construction site safety. I kind of fell into that. I did that for about a year and a half, and I was doing site audits, site inspections, on-site safety representation, things like that. And when Rusty approached me in 2014, he said, "Hey, we're starting a company back up, and I want to give you a job." And I said, "Well, hey, that sounds great. Once it's got some legs, give me a holler." Because in that day, they didn't have any money. They had enough money to get things up and running, but they didn't have any money to pay anybody. And, I still had to pay the mortgage. So I was close with my old boss at the time. I said, "Hey man, this is coming down the pike. I'm going to have to go at some point in the next few months. I don't want to leave you in the grease, but I am going to take this opportunity. But if you could keep me working until this opportunity is ready for me, I'd appreciate it." And he kept me working until the call came down, and I said, "Hey man, we can pay you, a few dollars an hour if you come over now, but I promise it'll get better in the future if we make this thing work."
Yeah.
I said, "Okay."
But it must have been exciting. Were you excited to kind of jump back in with family? Because that's really all you've known is family business after, or were you like a little hesitant?
No, there wasn't really any hesitation. I was never really certain exactly what I wanted to land in doing, but the opportunity presented itself, and I said, sure. I was excited at the opportunity. I wasn't sure where I wanted to land. I was kind of the drifter of the family. Rusty was always the driven, he learned the ins and outs of the fuel business, very entrepreneurial, like, hey, I'm going to learn everything. It was so frustrating growing up with Rusty.
And where is Rusty's the youngest?
He is the youngest.
Okay.
Yeah, he's the youngest. And, we all had our own interests growing up. He liked, sports and physical activities and troublemaking, and he was into motocross, but and I was kind of more of a nerd. I like video games and stuff like that, and so like I was good at that and he was good at this. The annoying thing was, though, if he ever took a shining to something that I was interested in, within a week he was better than me. He was one of those guys that just like could just absorb information, and execute. He was so good at that, and it's a very frustrating thing to grapple with. But it's benefited me and all of us in the long run, right? We've got this pretty great thing going. But so I came over in 2014 in April. Actually, yesterday was 10 years ago.
Wow. Happy 10-year anniversary.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So we, and at that time it wasn't, hey, we have a safety role we need filled. It's, hey, we need to do some safety stuff, but we really just need an extra set of hands in the office. So I came to work and, I was employee, outside of a handful of drivers, I was employee number 2 behind Tony Rayburn. And then Dale Jones was right after me, about 2 or 3 weeks after I came over. And in that day, we all just did everything. I came to work when it was time for me to move. I hadn't had a vacation in about 2 years when he made the call. I said, hey, Rusty, look, I'm coming. Give me a week off because I had time off, and I will start on that following Monday. And he said, yeah, that's fine. No problem. The Monday of my week off, I got a call from Rusty that said, hey, we've got a job in Port O'Connor and I need you there tomorrow. and it hasn't stopped since. It was a very Rusty thing to do.
For sure.
Hey, I know I told you could have some time off, but we've got work to do. So I actually started about 5-6 days before I was supposed to.
Naturally.
Yeah, but
the Moffitt way.
Yeah, exactly. And I walked in to the office. So my first job was out of town. So I started this company on a disaster.
Okay.
And I hadn't even set foot into the office yet. And then 3 weeks later, we come back from working that disaster and we walk into the office, and there's 2 boxes in the middle of the floor in the office. One of them's got my desk in it, and the other one's got my chair in it. And they said, well, there's your stuff. Go ahead and get started.
Oh, my goodness. And now look at you now.
Yeah.
So can you tell me a little bit about your journey and how fast things change? So you started with a chair and a desk and a box, which I'm so glad you told me that, because how interesting. Yeah. That is the most Moffitt thing I've ever heard.
Oh, it was terrible. It was absolutely horrible. So, I walked in, I put my own desk together. Dale actually joined at the same time that we came back from that disaster.
Okay.
And he got this, he didn't get the same treatment. He actually had a desk already, but it was one of those old, I don't remember what they're called, the desks with the that your grandma always had in her study, where it had this kind of.
Does it have the cover and you can lock it?
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
The thing that slides down the tracks, you know what I'm, okay. So he had that little bitty desk space, but I actually had a new desk, right? And I had the 2 desks, right? The one that my computer sat on and the one behind me for the work. Yeah. So me and Dale were both squeezed into that front office, and he only had this much desk space. So he actually leased a corner of my desk from me to stick his paperwork on, because it was right here in arm's reach. So we shared this middle desk, and he had his own and I had my own. And that front office was at my grandmother's old property. And it wasn't on city water. It was on a well with a septic system. And there was something wrong with the septic system. So if we've got too much rain, our office would start smelling like sewage. So for the first couple of years that I worked at the company, we had intermittent bursts of foul smelling office that we all worked in.
Yeah. Started from the bottom, now you're here.
Yeah,
right?
it's a different world today for sure. So from there, we just kept plugging along, and we all wore a bunch of different hats. I mean, there were different times where I would deliver a fuel tank, or have to run things across the state, or do billing, or do dispatch. We all did everything, just whatever needed doing. And then, we just kept adding trucks to the fleet. We kept expanding, and we went from 5 employees to 20 to 50 to 100 to where we're at now. I mean, it's been 10 years ago, and like I said, when I started, there was 4 of us in the office and probably five truck drivers.
Yeah.
And now we're sitting at about 200 employees, and it's been pretty wild to watch it grow up. So my department has about 4 people that work in it directly, and probably half a dozen that work in it indirectly, because there's a little bit of a hybrid between us and operations. Right? Yeah. We work pretty intimately. I work really closely with Dale, and he's our operations director, and we've had a really good working relationship for the whole decade that we've been here. We shared an office for years, and so it's really nice being able to tap him and say, hey man, got this thing that I need you to be doing.
Yeah.
And so it's really mutually beneficial. But yeah, it's been a weird thing going from that sort of small to that sort of big, particularly in the safety domain.
Yeah. So let's talk about safety. So how do things, when you're so small, I guess it's like a little bit more laxed, but since we have grown and you have grown and your fleet has grown and the amount of drivers that you're over have grown, what certain things in safety do you have to do differently? That's
a really good question. The main thing that was so frustrating when we first started operations was we didn't have any money.
Yeah.
And so, and people love to say, safety first, safety first, safety first, but the reality is safety, while it does confer a cost savings to a company overall, it is an investment, right? So you do have to have the money to spend to really execute on the programs. I mean, obviously, behavioral safety, you can, doesn't cost any money. It just costs time and attention, but resources, cost money. Essentially you're paying somebody to execute on some safety programming that's going to have, mid to long-term yield, right? If not direct yield. But so what happened in the early days of the business was, hey, we have this thing that's wrong with this truck and we need to stop the truck from operating until we can fix this thing. And they're like, yeah, but if we do that, then we won't make payroll this week. So there was a lot of knuckling under until you kind of till you get the ball rolling up to a certain scale. And as a company starts to scale, then all of a sudden, you turn the corner from we can't afford to do safety as effectively as we would like to we can't afford to not do safety as effectively as we humanly can, and that's been a really neat transition for me, where from being the kind of like the annoying stepchild in the corner that everybody just says shut up and sit down.
Yeah.
To being kind of one of the loudest, most important voices in the company has been a very weird transition for me, and something that I've had to adjust to, from saying, hey guys, would it be okay if we did this, to then a more authoritative stance of, hey guys, y'all aren't doing that.
Yeah.
The juice isn't worth the squeeze.
This is not safe.
Yeah. Well, the juice isn't worth the squeeze at this point, right? Because we have resources, we can adapt, we can adjust, and we can start really, making a very strong concerted effort to operate more safely, and not only is that extremely beneficial to the health and safety of the people that work for us in the motoring public, it's also helpful to the bottom line. When you start swimming in the pools that we're swimming in now, and operating with very large corporations, that's the first thing they look at nowadays,
Yeah. The safety scores, right? So from my understanding, there's 2 types of scoring that is done on a regular basis. So as you've scaled, can you explain to me about the importance of scoring in these different categories, and how do you maintain this score?
Okay. Yeah. So safety, broadly speaking, that's a very broad term for an organization, right? Yeah. We typically couch it in safety and compliance, but we've kind of got 2 sort of worlds that we live in as a company, as a truck company. I mean, we're a company, and like every other company on the planet, or I'm sorry, in the country, we have to deal with OSHA. I mean, everybody that does any kind of work anywhere has to deal with OSHA, Occupational Safety Health Organization. And they have a standard for recordable injuries, kind of any sort of workplace injury that happens. You have to maintain that documentation and report it. And any egregious injuries, you have to report it directly to them. And you maintain those scores. And those are used by our insurance company to determine what our insurance costs are. Those are used by prospective clients to find out if we're safe enough to operate on their sites. And so we've got a couple of things that derive from that sort of injury score. You've got a TRIR that companies are interested in. That's a total recordable injury rate. And then that's just that's a number on kind of your man hours worked versus the amount of recordable injuries that you have. Okay. And then then you also have an experience modifier, which is issued to you by your workers' compensation provider. And that's a calculation that they make in their way that has to do with kind of how many of your employees have interacted with your workers' compensation. And that has to do with, that'll dictate what you pay, right? Because your workers' compensation, what you have to pay for that is kind of a proportion of your payroll modified by this experience modifier rate. So a lower experience modifier is going to mean your workers' compensation bill is going to be cheaper.
Okay.
So both of those terms our clients care about a great deal. And obviously the way we manage those is by our safety programming, right? The sort of proactive safety programming, right? Hey, these are the things that we do to operate safe. Here's all of our policies on how we do things. And then reactive, when the incident happens, properly managing that incident. So having a good relationship with our medical provider, so that we can interact with them and make sure that our guys get the best treatment that they can get so that they can get up on their feet faster and sooner, making sure that we're in tune with the employee to help them get them back on their feet and what they need and make sure that we're supporting them fully, and also having a really strong return to work program, which is, light duty. Hey, as soon as you can work, we've got something for you to do to get you back to work. All of that has a profound impact on how these scorings work. We also have to interact with the FMCSA, Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. So that's the federal body. So you've got the United States Department of Transportation, then you've got the Texas Department of Transportation, and then many of the other states that we operate in have their own Department of Transportation. So it's like kind of this big mesh of departments that we've got to interact with. And the FMCSA has their own scoring system. They call it the SAFER system. And then they grade you on 7 different parameters called basics. Basically one's for vehicle maintenance, one's for driver fitness, one's for your drug and alcohol programming. There's a few others, but essentially they'll stack you up against other motor carriers that are of a similar scale and work type, and kind of measure you against them. And if you get too far out of line, then they'll come in, they'll audit you. And if you're not doing things properly, they'll shut you down. They'll say, hey, sorry, you don't have a motor carrier authority anymore. You're not allowed to move things. Mm-hmm. And so, insurance companies will also use that to grade us for our insurance use. And then the same thing with customers. Customers look at those scores to determine, how effectively we're doing. And managing those scores is not that different from managing the injury scores, right? Having a good proactive program.
Yeah.
And, being reactive to certain things because, officers are people too, and sometimes they make mistakes, and we have a process, to if they write us a violation that we don't think is fair or justified, we can say, hey, we think you did this wrong. And and then we can provide evidence for that, and they can actually take some of those negative scores out of our scoring in that regard.
So what is your most favorite part about working with the drivers directly?
Oh man, I don't get to do it as much as I used to. I mean, it used to be we were in the same office, at the beginning of the day, we were there when they were leaving. At the end of the day, we were there when they got back, and so you could handle problems that they had day in and day out, right? Because they weren't shy about it. They come in and tell you about it.
For sure.
Hey, this ain't working. Hey, this is working. Y'all need to fix this. But obviously since the flooding, and the scaling has shifted, our yard is now separate from where our office is. So it's a lot harder to get that one-on-one interaction and deal with them directly. Up until recently, I led all of our safety meetings at all of our terminals. Circumstances changed a few months ago, and I've had to have somebody fill in for me for a while. But my favorite part of interacting with the drivers, I've always liked it. That's a tough question.
Question.
Well, I mean, it's just because I've always done it since since I was a little kid. I've always been around truckers, so
'cause they really are. I mean, the backbone of this business, and I feel like they look up to you in a way to make sure that they're safe on the road. So I didn't know if you had like a particular, also if that's a weird question, we can
no, I mean, our style of drivers, one thing that I really like about our style of drivers is is get it done mentality, right? Because we've been running our company that way for, 30, 40 years, right? And any iteration of Moffitt, it's always been the case of what's it going to take to get the job done, right? We don't tell people, we'll have people call us and say, hey man, I need fuel now. We don't tell them too bad, so sad. We say, well, let me figure out how we're going to make it work. And our drivers definitely reflect that same attitude, hey boss, whatever you need.
So you like showing them the culture.
Yeah, very much so. Well, in a lot of ways, they kind of drive the culture. I guess I don't want to throw any shade at my coworkers that I got to go to work with in the office or whatever, but it's just a different idea, right? These are guys that do hard things, right? They lift heavy things. They go into unhospitable locations, and sometimes in feet deep flood water, sometimes in the pouring rain. And they go out, and no matter what the circumstance is they get the job done. And one of my favorite things is interacting with drivers that have run with us for a few years is they'll call in to dispatch and they'll say, hey man, I'm at a stop and this is a problem I'm running into. No, it's fine. I'm going to get it done. I just wanted to let you know I'm being held up a little bit, right? Not, hey, I've got this problem, I'm not doing this. They figure out a way to get it done. And I really appreciate that. But, it's a different kind of person than somebody that's, working a desk all day.
Oh, for sure. My favorite events that we do within the organization is when I do have the chance to be in front of the drivers, because you're right. The office culture is a little bit different, but even speaking to our drivers, we kind of all agree with the same thing, is we all have the get it done mentality, and we all believe that service comes first. And so it's really cool to see how the culture has trickled down all the way to our front lines.
I would say that it's trickled up.
Right. Okay.
Because, for the whole of the organization, we always have had, and likely always will have, more truckers than we will have, office personnel.
Absolutely.
And in the early days, it was, the four of us and half a dozen truckers, and then 10 and then 15 and then 20 truckers. So, and we got to interact with them directly all day, every day. And I grew up in a family that's always been in a trucking environment. So I would say that the guys that operate our vehicles are the cornerstone of our culture. They are the ones that did derive our culture. We've been a trucking company first and foremost for all of our history.
Absolutely.
So I would say that I really appreciate the way that our office personnel have adopted that trucker get it done mentality.
And then also from your generational culture as well, right? I'm sure your grandmother was the exact same way. Like, she didn't say no. Or how was she? How did she conduct business, and what was her culture like?
Well, I didn't ever get to work directly with Grandma. She retired before I entered the workforce. But customer service was definitely high on her to-do list. They've had articles, written about her, and they made a pretty big splash back in their day. And obviously Dad learned what he learned working with her. And that's just how he always ran the business. I don't know what else to say about that. At least from a work life, right? But from a personal perspective, Grandma was she was always busy. She was always getting something done. Her husband died when my dad was 14, so it was just her and those two boys for a lot of years, and she had to make things work, both from taking care of them in the home and taking care of the business. And then I got to grow up right across the yard from Grandma's house. And so not only was she running a business, but she also always had like home baked, delicious stuff for us to go over there and get.
Like good grandmas do, the best part.
Yeah, like gingerbread and rock candy. And, now sometimes, and again, she was a product of her time, right? And in her time, Spam was still an acceptable thing to feed your grandkids. So, we'd all go over there and she'd like grill us up some Spam and put it on some sandwich bread with some Miracle Whip. I still like that.
I love it. It's the best. Grandmas are the best, especially when she lived so close to you. That must have been nice growing up.
Yeah, it was.
Good role model. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for being on the show. Overall, it was so great to get to, dive into the safety department and your journey here at Moffitt. You are a fourth generation in the fuel business, and it's been so exciting to see how much you've grown. Happy 10-year anniversary.
Thank you.
Thank you for being on the show. I need to have you back so we can talk more about safety, but I always like to close with this, and I'll ask you this one question. You can kind of tell me your thoughts, but if you had to describe Moffitt Services in one word, what would it be?
Adaptable. From four dudes in an office just trying to figure out how to get it done and keep everybody paid, to over 200 people in 4 different markets, and this scale and this different responsibility, and from wearing all of those hats to more specializing into our roles. And then, the different environments that we work in and the different types of work that we've done. I would say that the biggest strength of Moffitt Services, and I would say that my biggest contribution to Moffitt Services is adaptability.
Excellent. I would agree with that. Well, thank you again. I really appreciate it. We'll have to have you back for round 2 to kind of dive into more of the safety things that you direct at Moffitt Services. But thank you, Ryan.
Thanks,
and Landry. I'm so excited that we finally did this after all of our rescheduling.
Me too.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Fuel Disclosure, a Moffitt Services podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please be sure to like and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss a moment from Moffitt. And if you're ready to take your business to the next level with a team that delivers industry-leading service and no downtime, visit us at moffittservices.com.